You've gone from 0 to upwards of 30 million a year ARR, bootstrapped. Tens of thousands of companies are using Lemlist today.
It's like 75% on creating this credibility, sharing educational content, doing build in public, and then the rest would be like very more bottom of the funnel and promotional content.
How do you measure all of this content?
Attribution is hard in general. It's even harder when it comes to content. At Lemlist, we have this philosophy.
Domi, thank you for joining me today. I'm super excited to chat with you. I have been following Lemlist's journey for quite some time. One of the reasons is, and one of the things we'll probably talk about a lot today, is the founder-led and the employee-led sort of content and LinkedIn strategy you all have done. You've done a great job sort of documenting the journey along the way, and then how fast and how large Lemlist has grown has in large part been due to that, frankly. And I know you've added a lot of other sort of content channels to the mix as time has gone on, and we'll go through all of that. But for everybody to have a little bit of context, you are the CMO at Lemlist, and Lemlist is essentially like an all-in-one prospecting platform. So you can identify your ICP, all the various personas that are in your TAM, and be able to outreach to them. It's a very powerful tool that can essentially solve that entire sort of stack and that flow all in one in the platform. And as long as my understanding is correct, I believe you've gone from 0 to upwards of 30 million a year ARR, bootstrapped. You all have had acquisition offers that you have turned down along the way, kept doubling down, and I love that. Tens of thousands of companies are using Lemlist today. You have millions of monthly LinkedIn impressions every single month. And your first 1 million in ARR came from LinkedIn, exactly what I was describing, that founder-led, LinkedIn content strategy. And that has, I believe, and we can touch on this when we get there, but LinkedIn still is one of your top inbound generators of signups and customers and users. So yeah, that's kind of the context for everybody. And
what an intro!
Maybe if we could just, yes, yeah.
I'm gonna hire you.
Yeah, I mean, as I was, yeah, I mean, like this is exciting because you're pulling a lot of content levers. We could talk for quite some time, so I'm gonna try to keep it sort of like laser focused here. But yeah, you're doing social extremely well. Your YouTube channel is very strong. You've got a great employee sort of advocacy and personal brand strategy operating very well. Your short form video strategy is firing very effectively. And so maybe before we dive into like the content strategy and tactics, like specifically, could you just give like in the CMO seat, how you think about marketing and the prioritization, whether it be however we want to look at the terms, like lead gen for those who are actively searching for a solution like Lemlist today. They're going into Google, they're typing in those keywords, and you obviously want to be found in those places, versus more of that 95% content marketing or brand building, and essentially like wanting to be in front of the 95% of buyers who are not in market today, but they will be days, weeks, months later. And you want them to already be thinking about Lemlist as the number one option when they do move in market, because of the content and awareness and affinity you've already built with them. So how do you think about those two buckets, just from the broadest perspective, from a philosophical standpoint?
Well, I think you've already kind of answered. The success of Lemlist was built on the build in public strategy we had from a founder, Guillaume Moubesh, and the fact that he started giving value before anything else and before selling promotional stuff. And as he always says, eating his own dog food and trying Lemlist and sharing whatever would work or not. And I think this is still the philosophy we have in the marketing team. And when it comes to content, it's share first value, to create brand preference and awareness and advocate about the pain that our audience feels. And that's the number one priority that we will always have. Obviously, then we are in the mature market. So it's also important that we talk to the prospects that are already looking for a solution and ready to buy, and that we convince them that we are the best solution and we are in a quite competitive landscape. So we are obviously also investing there. But I would say that because we are in this mature market, that we are lucky to be bootstrapped, to have a lot of budget, which is not the case for a lot of companies. And because this is the philosophy of Lemlist, it's like 75% on creating this credibility, sharing educational content, doing build in public, and then the rest would be like very more bottom of the funnel and promotional content.
Super helpful. Thank you. And so then when it comes to that 75%, could you give an overview of what those sort of channels are that you're focused on at the moment? And then we can go into some specifics, but just so the audience has that context on like what channels you're focused on to where you're allocating that 75%. What are those channels?
Yeah, so on those like demand gen part and brand awareness and educating the market, we're doing a lot of things. I would say maybe that we have like 7 channels that we are using. We are doing educational webinars, trying to have like great speakers, great US sales leaders, for instance, or sales influencers in the US. We are doing a lot, as you mentioned, of LinkedIn advocacy. We actually have people inside Lemlist that happens to have like 50K followers on LinkedIn and that do like 1 million of impression over the year. We can go back to that after because there is a lot to say here, I think. We are doing YouTube.
Yep.
YouTube has always been like one of the favorite channels for Guillaume. And he actually happens to have his own channels. He has one in English, one in French. And so we also have one for Lemlist. And most of the content there is super educational, quite top of the funnel. We also do short form videos, maybe educational, but also, and mostly recently, and we can also talk about this later, but more like relatable, entertaining content just to create connection with our audience. So that would be like a funny style video or stuff like this. We also publish a lot of playbooks and workflows, like super practical content, because outbound is a technical subject. And at some point, if you want to talk to sales teams and especially RevOps team, you need to bring some technicity in your content. And so playbooks and workflows are a good way to produce this kind of content.
Right.
That is a bit like goes a bit more into depth of the job. Then obviously no, because I was gonna say we actually try to leverage a lot of sales audience to create content for sales by sales, and this can take like different forms.
Yeah.
But for instance, lately we've launched like outbound playbooks. So basically, it's like VP of sales or BDR sharing how they operate outbound inside the company, and it's a mix of videos, sharing templates that they use, sharing concrete examples of copywriting from the emails. So it's a bit of hybrid content, but this has been so well received in the market because it's not really seen. Like our audience see how other similar peers do their own job and succeed at it. And this is, I think, the best content you can create to educate in your market.
Incredible. And with those, just a quick question on those. Are those with external creators and influencers, or is that internal generated content?
Yeah, we have a philosophy at Lemlist at trying to do most of the things we do ourselves. And
Okay. Yep.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's because we are bootstrap and it's like sometimes company that raise a lot of funds, they might like use their money to use a lot of agencies to create content for them. Maybe because we have this philosophy of being doers and launching stuff fast and iterating, and also thinking that it's like getting your hands dirty, that you also takes the learnings faster, but still, we don't have all
Yeah.
the knowledge inside. So it's super important to be able to leverage external people to create content. But it's not really for the sake of producing, it's not for the sake of getting the knowledge where it is. So I think this is something we talked about just by email before. But basically, I think for a marketing team, the biggest challenge is creating expert level content when you're not actually marketing to marketers. Because I mean, when you are creating content inside a marketing team, you know a lot about marketing. But if you are marketing toward, I don't know, finance people or sales people like we are, you don't really know what it takes to be a CFO or VP of sales. So you need at some point to find that expertise somewhere else. And this is where it makes sense, I think, to go and find some help and expertise. And you could do it through like four ways, basically going to your customers or prospects. So this is what we do with the sales playbook I mentioned. The last one published was with the VP of sales of 11 Lab, and it's amazing. He shares so many stuff like concrete metrics and example. We also do a lot of stuff with partners. So Lemlist works a lot with outbound agencies, and I'm sure like most B2B SaaS have partners. And often they're like really good at what they do. And so we leverage them sometimes to create content on topics that they're really good at. For instance, we have this guy in the UK. He loves like copywriting, and so we from time to time we create like templates with him because he's so good at it. So this is a great way to create content, like leveraging other knowledge. Also, you can leverage communities. I think this is something sometimes people forget about, but most of industries have established communities where basically people just meet to share questions and pains and learnings. And those communities, if you can get inside them, those are like great to get some knowledge, but also stats. For instance, there is a community called Business Operation Networks. It's a RevOps community, and our CEO is part of it. And sometimes he runs annual like surveys, big surveys on them to learn about the tools they're using, the latest challenges, the latest metrics. And this is great content to share then for your audience, right? So yeah, communities are amazing. And last thing about this, I truly believe that something is probably going to change in the next years, but I believe that marketing teams are going to hire experts, like job experts inside their own team. Like I believe that if you're SaaS fintech, tomorrow you will hire an ex-CFO, or maybe not a CFO, but an ex-finance guy inside your marketing team to create content for CFOs. Because I believe this is the best way to create content, and also to have someone that can be the face and be like legit to talk to your audience in webinars. I'm not legit in webinar to talk to sales team. Like I'm not having, like people hang up on me all day long. But if I have a sales, and we always leverage our sales team at Lemlist, and they were super nice with the marketing team. But if I have a sales in my own team that can do this content and like be the face of the company, this is so much stronger. So right now I'm actually recruiting a sales inside my marketing team. So yeah, I think this is super strong.
Okay, so are you hiring for that role on your marketing team? It sounds like.
I have someone like at the very end of my pipe, so hopefully this job will be closed soon enough. But yeah.
I love all of this. A couple things that I would say here as well, which would be one is that if you don't have that internal expertise, to your point, you can be the guide. You don't necessarily have to be the expert. Ideally, you can get to that point where you are able to bring on a subject matter expert creator, which is sort of like a designated role that you're describing there. But if you're not in that position quite yet, and sounds like to what you all have been doing is leveraging current customers, partners, external friends who are in that position of expertise, but you collaborate and co-create that content together, because you can still capture the audience TAM that is those roles, because that content, your job is to make sure that content is the most valuable possible content for them. You don't necessarily have to be the one generating the insights, although it is ideal. But yes, you can be the guide. I completely agree with that. The concept of the internal creator that is a subject matter expert, I think that is the next evolution of internal content creation. Frankly, I think this concept of an SME creator, like that
Mm,
is your role in-house. And the reason why is because it is incredibly difficult. We've seen with many companies where the internal expert has the capability. Number one, do they have the capability and interest in even creating content? And then number two,
yeah,
do they have the time? And it is incredibly difficult to find someone internal to check both of those boxes
definitely.
when that's actually not a part of their role and responsibility that they were hired for.
Yeah,
It's
that's
an
such a good
afterthought. And
point.
then it's like, where are they supposed to carve that time? And are they good on camera? Do they even enjoy creating content? Those are incredibly important things for the sustainability and effectiveness of your content strategy. And so it is such an unlock. It's obviously a meaningful part of your budget allocation to carve out a role like that. But I think the ROI on a role like that will be 10, 20, 100, 1,000x eventually
100%.
over time.
Hmm.
Um, and then you're not actually overtasking the other person on the team who wasn't actually hired to do that role.
Exactly. No, but this resonates so much because for a long time we had you can see him like he's basically the number one face on a YouTube channel, a big blonde guy, Tal. And so he was one of our first sales guy and he was like really marketing best friend and tell I love you, like always happy to jump on a webinar, on a YouTube shoot, do a lot of videos for us. But at the same time, he had quotas to hit, and now he's like leading the cam
Yes.
team. He has like people to onboard and train. He cannot do this anymore, you know. So we were lucky enough to have this person willing to do it, being good at it, and actually being
Mhm.
passionate about it. But at some point, he has another job to fill, right? So exactly what you're
Yes.
saying.
How did you approach that role that you created, sort of that job description, or how would you recommend another company to think about actually like posting for that role? What do you set any benchmarks of, like, what does good look like? What are the outcomes we're hoping to drive? Or yeah, any tips on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's been like a challenge because it's the first time I hire such a role, to be honest, and I couldn't find a lot of similar roles. So I could bench, like when you're hiring for product marketing, you can bench like 100 like job descriptions, and you have already done it like several
Yeah.
times. So you know what good looks like. You write your scorecard in like 5 minutes. For that role, I think there are maybe two learnings that I have now. Um, First, I think it's super important that if you want this person to stay relevant in their role, you need to accept that this person should still allocate a small percentage of the time doing their initial job. So basically, I want this person, and I have decided this like lately. I want this person to keep doing a bit of sales, and that's a good thing because
Mm,
we have another expert inside the marketing team that can like create a lot of traction for this guy to call leads and write sequences, because I want him to stay like aware of what are the
yes.
pains, what are the best tools, try those, try your own product and build in public. But if he doesn't or she doesn't do sales anymore,
Yes.
then it's not gonna be like as strong. So this is like the first learning. I'm recruiting
Mm,
someone to create content, but I still want this person to keep a bit like a foot into the initial job and into the field. And I think this is super important. And you need to accept this as a leader. This person cannot like allocate 100% of their time creating content. Otherwise, it will be empty again, like after some months. And second, I think it's like it's hard to make this kind of job attractive. I mean, maybe it's because I'm looking for sales
hmm.
who want to do marketing. Maybe it's easier to look, I'm not sure, but to look for finance or HR that want to do marketing. I think it is. Uh, but so yeah, you need to think how am I gonna market this role and like make sure good players are gonna actually be interested by this role, and not only people that suck at the job and looking for an exit door. And so you have to think what's in it for them, like why is it a win-win? And I think
Mhm.
for us, the win-win here and the story to share was like you're going to be the face of the company and you're going to be able to build your personal brand. And this is such a strong asset in today's world to build a career, to have a strong brand on LinkedIn and to publish
Right.
a lot. And there are not a lot of companies that actually allow you to do this, like publish success, because companies are like, oh, don't tell how we did this, otherwise everyone is going to do the same. No, but there is something different between the idea and the execution, So yeah, being able to publish the success, but
Yes.
also the failures, not being afraid of saying we tried this and we wasted tons of money or tons of times, sharing metrics. And so, yeah, at Lemlist, we allow this. And we accept also that we invest in people that might grow the audience and that someday they might leave, And yeah, this is a risk, but we are betting on those people and it's okay. And so that was my win-win, the thing I was offering basically. And a lot of sales person are really interested into building their own audience, but they're in companies where they don't have the time
Right.
or they're not allowed to do so. And so that was my sweet spot. And so I changed the name of the job description. First it was named sales content strategist or something like this. And I had like really bad inbound. And then I just changed the name to from AE to sales influencer. And I got like much more
Ooh.
good inbound. So I think
Yes.
it's all about marketing the role.
Yes. Oh, that is gold. That is gold. Yeah, I think it's really smart to keep some portion of the role tactical. Because to your point, eventually, let's say we fast forward and they are successful in the role and they're there for 12, 18 months, 24 months, then now they're really referencing, at least from their first person point of view, strategies and things they were doing 24 months ago. And so that can be problematic. And so it's almost switching this idea of let's not find a salesperson on our team to allocate 10% of their time to content. Let's find a sales influencer and they allocate 10% of their time to sales and 90% to content. So you basically switch it, but you
Exactly.
still you keep the prioritization in line with what you're looking for with the role. Okay, that is fantastic. I love all of that. Let's go to, if you look at all the different channels that you now are operating, if we kind of just take it back to square one a little bit, and you're looking at recommending or advising to a team on how they should approach getting
Mm.
started with content in general. Let's say it's a team that has a really strong product. They have high retention, high customer satisfaction, and they've grown through other channels, but now they want to layer on content in a meaningful way. I think there's a lot of companies actually in that bucket. They've maybe done a little bit of stuff here and there, but like, okay, now it's time to really
Hmm.
put on some demand gen, 95%, whatever you want to call it. How do you recommend companies approach that from first principles?
It's really funny that you're asking because this is like probably the question I receive the most from founders when CEOs write to me on LinkedIn for marketing advices. The number one question being like, who should I hire as a head of marketing? But the second one is often like, where should I start with content, etc. And I think I have a framework that I think it can work for everyone. Basically, companies should ask what's their market maturity and what's their budget. So you can see this as a matrix.
Mm.
Basically, you have on one side the market maturity and on the other the budget. And so we can start with the left up corner. So if you're not in a very mature market, but you happen to have quite a lot of budget because maybe let's say just raise funds or you're a super successful bootstrap
Mhm.
company and you happen to have like runway in front of you. Um, I I think then here, yes, start by creating demand because like 90% of your time is not aware that they need a solution like you, this is what it means to be in a not mature market. You have a lot of signs that tell you that you're not in a mature market. You don't have a lot of competitors. You don't like have a lot of searches on Google about your keywords. And it's fine. Sometimes it's great to be not in a mature market because then you can have the first mover advantage. And if you have, again, the budget and the money, then that's great. Like invest in demand generation. And so launch your own podcast, do tutorial webinars, just educate basically, because you need to convince people they have an issue they're not aware of. And you need also to build credibility around your brand. Something that works super well in those cases, in my experience, it's creating like studies and benchmarks, because people love like knowing where they are versus other companies in the same industry. So this is the kind of content that can work like super, super well. But then if you go back to these metrics and you go like on the opposite corner, where basically you are in a mature market, but you don't have a lot of money, which is probably the case for a lot of companies, because they launch their own product because they know there is a huge pain, but they are pre-seed and they don't have a lot of money. They have a like one-person marketing team. And sometimes they come to me like, should I launch my podcast? I'm like, no, dude, don't launch a podcast. Like, do bottom of the funnel content and just start by buying time and convincing the people that are already ready to buy and looking for solutions. So here you can do like super good content, like success stories. Just take your top 3 clients that are super happy, offer them something. It can be just a lunch, or credits, and create a super cool story with metrics, do a video out of it, then give it to your sales team, use it in your outbound campaigns, in your email nurturing. Just go after, like the demand that is already there. You can also do obviously like use cases, how to content that is super useful, on how to be basically successful with your own solution. Those are content that rank pretty well on YouTube, for instance, and that can resonate quite well with people that are already looking for a solution and are quite aware of what they should use. So this is my advice. And obviously, then if you take like the sweet spot, that's basically you're in a mature market with a strong budget. That's, for instance, Lemlist case. Well, you can double down, and meaning you should do both, because obviously you should go after the existing demand, but you should always think of the future and keep working on your own brand awareness and educating the market, because the market is evolving so fast. Like, for instance, outbound is changing so fast. Like a few years ago, spray and pray would work. You would just send tons of emails and you would get a decent percentage of answer, and that's how outbound works. But today it doesn't anymore. Like, so you need to educate again and again. So what's the new market today? How to succeed in this new market? So you should never stop educating and creating content that's not promotional, in my opinion. And especially if you have the team and the budget to do it, you should not stop. And then you have the last one, the low left hand corner, where you are not in a mature market and you don't have budget. And I'm always telling, this is the abort mission corner. Don't go there. Like, if you need to educate your market and you don't have the money, you don't have the team, it won't work. Like, because creating demand, creating awareness, it takes time, and it takes resources, and it won't drive like direct answers. So
Very, very helpful. I love that visual. And let's take an example of, let's say they have budget and they are not in a mature market. So they have to sort of prioritize creating that awareness and affinity to some degree. What would be your recommendations then on how to think about, because even with budget, you still have to prioritize which content levers you want to pull, and in sort of what order and over what period of time and all of that kind of stuff. Is there any way you think through that? Like, you mentioned, content basically being not optional at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe what is optional is like which things you prioritize at what time. So do you say like, hey, we need to start with here? I would recommend you start with XYZ, then go to the next one, go to the next, how do you
Yeah,
think about that?
there is only one answer: is where is your audience looking for information and
Hmm.
how are they consuming content? And this can really be different depending on the industry, but also on the seniority of your persona. Let's say, like, if you're targeting senior HR VP, it's not going to be the same if you're targeting junior BDR. Obviously, they're not going to consume content the same way. They're not
Hmm.
going to go on the same platform. So I would start there. Like, and you can like
Yep.
launch a little survey toward your users. This is something I do a lot of the time. I always
Mm.
add marketing questions to our annual product surveys. Like, where do you consume
Yeah.
content? Do you go to
Yep.
events? What's your favorite podcast? And yeah, this is super
Yep.
helpful because this is how you know where to start. Like, sometimes people come to me and say, "Oh, like I love the employee advocacy you have on Lemlist. How do you do this? I really want to do this for my company." And then I look at what they do. And basically, they are targeting a senior VP in the health industry, people that are not on LinkedIn. And I'm like, "Are you sure this is
Right.
where you want
Right.
to go?" Right? But and on the contrary, there are
Yeah.
tons of local events and conferences for health,
Yep.
and I'm like, maybe I would start by like doing one pillar presentation about, I don't know, with numbers and trends,
Mm.
and use it and hack like those conferences. And maybe that will be more useful than having your employees speaking on LinkedIn
Mm.
when your audience is not even listening there. So yeah, that would be my answer to prioritize.
Yes. Absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. And speaking of that, then maybe for those companies where it would make sense to launch and scale an employee sort of personal brand and advocacy program, which you all have done really well for LinkedIn, which is, starting with the founder on LinkedIn. And he executed that and still is executing that really well. And now you've added on other employees to
Mhm.
that equation. So, in an effort to sort of like help this be true, which would be anytime one of your prospects or potential audience would open up LinkedIn in an ideal world, they're seeing content from somebody from Lemlist. That's sort of
Yeah,
like, if we just look at the North Star goal, like that's
of
a
course.
dream scenario. And I think you all have executed to that end very well. So let's say somebody is in a camp of it makes sense. Their audience is on
Mm.
LinkedIn, their market is on LinkedIn. How do you recommend approaching building that out?
Well, if it makes sense for your audience, I think that should be the number one priority, because there is a lot of room to grow on LinkedIn, and it's still quite working. It's not as easy as it used to be, I think, like maybe 10 years ago, 5 years
Yep.
ago, where you could get tons of followers super fast, but
Yep.
still the engagement is still pretty good if you're posting the right content. So definitely worth it. I think it's a great
Yes.
channel because it serves both the awareness, the credibility, but also if you're doing it like with the right split, it can be a great channel to also distribute more promotional content. So it's definitely a sweet spot between like both. And actually, there was a
Yep.
company that I think it was like a growth agency that used that term, and I really liked it. That said that they had the Avenger strategy. So basically, they would have several superheroes in the company with a specific, like role and image and tone of voice. And everyone would, in their own way, start building their own audience and storytelling on LinkedIn. And this is what we've tried to do at Lemlist. And I think it's working super well. So basically, we obviously have our founder, Guillaume Moubesh, talking to founders, our CEO talking to CEO, but also a lot to VP sales and RevOps because he comes from there. So he gets those topics quite well and love speaking
Yes.
about it. We have our VP of sales talking to sales. We have our lead op talking to ops, myself talking to CMOs, or we have a lead growth that has like 30K followers. He speaks a lot about growth and outbound. So I think this is great. Like, you shouldn't ask for people to talk about everything. Like, you should let people speak about what they know and be the face of what they like. It should be logical, right? And this, I think this is a mistake I see sometimes. Like, companies are like, okay, we're gonna post on LinkedIn some generic content, and everyone is gonna speak about the same thing. It doesn't work because it doesn't feel legit. And also, I don't think it works to force people posting some kind of generic content. People should post stuff about their everyday life, their beliefs. And so this requires a lot of freedom. And
Right.
again, I said this earlier, I think that's the number one advice I give to CEOs that want to launch employee advocacy in the company. I'm giving them a checklist. I'm like, are you okay
Mm.
with people sharing
Yeah.
success and failures, sharing numbers, sharing sometimes belief that you won't agree with? Like, I'm not sending my LinkedIn post to my CEO for validation every time. I knew a CEO who was like, I'm validating everything. I'm like, how do you want to
Right.
scale if you validate everything? And it's just gonna sound like corporate fluff at the end if you validate everything. Like, I'm allowed to roast my own CEO. And I think that's why some of my posts have like, worked so well, because CMOs love roasting their own boss, right? And because sometimes they deserve
Yep.
it. So I think this is very important. And obviously, like, knowing that you should post 90% educational, entertaining, relatable content and 10% promotional. Obviously, when we have a big launch and something exciting, I'm talking about it. But
Yep.
like, again, if you look at my post in the last year, it's not even 10%. It's like 5% is promotional, and the rest is really about my life as a CMO. And I think this is also very important, because if you keep just selling your own stuff, people are not gonna be interested by what you're saying. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the operating system, basically, obviously, like, having a great profile. This is the basics. Like, I'm not gonna go through it, but like this,
Mhm.
uh, a sharp description about what you
Yep.
do and what you're talking about. uh like, cool LinkedIn cover and profile picture, etc. A featured post on your profile. That's like the super basics. But then if you go into less basics, I think when you start, it's really important to define your core topic pillars. Like, what are the 3 to 4 topics you're gonna cover? For instance, for me as a CMO, I'm like, I'm gonna speak about hiring and management. I'm gonna speak about marketing strategy. I'm gonna speak about
Mm.
creativity. And so find your pillars so you're kind of consistent into what you're saying, because this is super important. People are looking for consistency. And because otherwise people are gonna be lost if you speak about A one day and Z the other day. And obviously, like, being active on LinkedIn, comment on other people's posts, following other people. I'm using Lemlist to add CMOs automatically a bit every day. This works super well to get new followers and great, like, relevant people following myself back. So yeah, those are like all the advices that I would give.
Yes. So good. Yeah, so good. And this topic, honestly, could obviously be an entire episode on its own. So we'll kind of cover the broad, like, main key points there. But one question I would have on that is, how are you incentivizing or encouraging, or maybe not necessarily in this term, but requiring those other employees to post on LinkedIn? Because kind of it goes back to what we were talking about before. If it's not a part of their role and responsibility that they are measured against in terms of their annual evaluations or what have you, and they're
Yeah.
actually measured against hitting quota, and maybe they don't necessarily see this random post on a Tuesday that they're going to do is going to help them achieve that. How
Mm.
are you baking that into something that is allowing all the team to do this in unison?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually had debate internally about this. Like, should we financially incentivize people to post and like reach some kind of engagement and impressions. We actually tried this, but then we stopped because we thought this wasn't our DNA. And actually, we worked a lot on our employer branding content and DNA recently, and we decided that building public and basically being transparent was in our core DNA, and that we would expect employees to embrace this without like being financially supported, like to incentivize to do this. And in the end, I truly believe I was the one deciding to stop paying people. Like a lot of leaders were like, "No, okay, let's do this. It's fine. We already have a lot of perks at Lemlist and a lot of bonus." I was like, "No, like it's gonna be a win-win or not." Like we are offering people the opportunity to build their brand and use whatever they do at Lemlist to be like credible in the market and bet for their future career. And I think that's already like something great. And I want people to publish on LinkedIn because they are passionate and because they love doing it, not because they're forced or because they want to be paid at the end of the month, because in the end the results were not so good. And the best posts have been the one posted by people that are not looking for money. They're just doing it because they love sharing, they love building their community, and they know that tomorrow if they look for a job, or I don't know, like when I launch their own company, this will be a huge asset. So yeah, this is my opinion. Maybe some people won't agree with this, but yeah.
Yeah, I think this concept or fear that used to exist a few years ago, which was, well, what if all of these employees that we have on the team start posting and we are helping encourage that and provide resources and support for that, but then they leave the company.
Yeah.
And that was a fear, and I think that still is a fear, but the fact of the matter is that is something that's going to exist and it's never not going to exist. And your only other option is to not do it and only have the person or the people who you can 100% validate will never leave the company, which presumably would be the founder, not even the CEO. The CEO may leave at some point
Yeah.
potentially, but it's really the founder. So is your entire social strategy only going to revolve around that one person who will probably never leave the company? Or do you want to take advantage of the best execution capability possible for that platform, which would be what you just described? And so like that reward scale is far weighted in your favor, in my opinion, in comparison to the risk. It's a rational fear, but the
It is.
alternative is to simply not do this strategy. And I don't think that is wise.
Exactly. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So there's two more things I wanted to cover. One would be a fun topic that B2B doesn't touch on too often, which is TikTok. We'll end on that fun one.
Okay.
The one question that I could see, some people having right now is like, how do you measure all of this content? Are you looking at this in terms of, to your point, if content is not optional, then we don't need to look at certain measurements or like inbound or pipeline and say, if we don't generate X pipeline from LinkedIn, we're going to stop doing LinkedIn. It doesn't sound like that's even on the radar because it's not optional. Like we have to be on LinkedIn because that's where our market is. So if that's true, then how are you looking at the measurement or the success or whatever you equate the ROI against, or any of those sort of benchmarks?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you like concrete answers, but before, as an intro, I think it goes back to your company's initial philosophy. And if you are in a company that has a strong belief in content, like we have at Lemlist, because the whole success was built on what Guillaume's built with content, then it's all easier because you have this, it's like faith. Like you have this faith that whatever you do, it will have an impact. And I would advise as a marketer to make sure that if you like content and want to do content, like qualify this before you enter a company, because there's nothing worse than arriving in a company that has no belief whatsoever on the impact of content and then is asking all the time measure like KPI and metrics, because yes, you can, and I'm gonna give an answer here,
Yes.
but it's super hard. to attribute this. Attribution is hard in general. It's even harder when it comes to content. So
Yes.
at Lemlist, we have this philosophy: first, that content is super powerful, and second, that maybe not even for content, but for marketing in general, it's better to spend your time doing stuff and launching stuff rather than trying to attribute everything and build complex dashboard and apps. Like, we would rather spend our time get done and launching stuff than being like, little HubSpot dashboard, holistic dash. We have dashboard, but obviously with a 35 million AR company. But yeah, I think this is super important. So regarding the metrics, again, I think you don't have the same if you're doing either like content for demand generation and brand awareness, and rather if you're doing content for lead generation. If you're doing content for brand awareness and creating the demand for tomorrow, obviously there are KPIs you can look at. For the brand awareness, you could look at the share of direct traffic and branded SEO. This is still the best metric you could have. And like, I've experienced this in a lot of companies, especially in my previous companies where we were launching offices abroad. So we would, like, for instance, arrive in Germany, like with no brand awareness at all, and so the searches for the brand name in those countries would be 0 or like 2. And then after 1 year of launching a podcast, doing webinars, blog posts, we would start having like maybe like 20% of our traffic from people typing directly the name of the company. This is a great metric that shows that people are starting to search. The basic, but I think it's still like probably the best one. Like the brand searches, obviously, like looking at the evolution of brand search on Google. Social mentions, I think this one is less powerful, but still can be. I think it's more of a vanity metric, to be honest. Because unless you're like a huge B2B or B2C brand, the social mentions probably won't be big enough to give you an idea, but still it can be a good insight. Obviously LLM requests, and your share of voice on LLM is a good insight, and especially now that we are in the AI area, I would advise to look at this. So yeah, this is like basically for demand gen. And something else that sometimes marketing teams forget about, it's also the evolution of your conversion rates, especially if you're sales led, obviously. Because for instance, I've seen it, like I was only working in sales led company. Every time we were running outbound campaigns, there would be a huge difference in terms of conversion rates. When we would have a little of brand awareness, when we don't, and this makes sense, right? Like your sales calls, and if like 100% of the guys are calling never heard whatsoever about your brand, it's gonna be harder for them to reach the next step, right? So this is a good sign if sales are like it's less hard for sales to book meetings when you are like launching a lot of marketing initiatives to educate in the market and create awareness. So that's for the demand gen side of thing. And then for the lead gen, I would say you can use content definitely to fill your sales pipeline. Like for instance, let's say you do a success story and you push it with ABM on LinkedIn, or you stuff like very bottom of the content. Basically, you could definitely bench the conversion rate from those campaigns versus your average promotional product-led campaigns and see if it works better. And that's a good sign that your content is helping driving either signups or demos into your funnel. If you have like a strong ops team, you could also, in my previous company, we were doing this, you could also look at influence deals. So basically, every time a sales is using a content you've created, may it be a one-pager, battle card, like bottom of the funnel content, and that it led to meeting, then you can say, yes, the content that we are creating is helping our sales team close deals. So it has an impact.
Yeah, I think it's also just, let's look practically at where we are hanging out and what channels and things are influencing our decisions as buyers and users as well. And so it's like, yes, like LinkedIn is hard to attribute a click to an inbound because it's not necessarily like LinkedIn organic or YouTube or any of these other content channels. because that's not really how we behave. And so we can also just look at, if our market is on a channel, we should probably be there. And then we can do smart things to measure, are we being the most effective we can be on that channel, but not should we be on that channel. And I think, the way you described it is really great. We've got a few minutes left. Is there a quick, I teased the TikTok thing. Not many B2B companies are focused on TikTok. What would you say is any learnings you've had from TikTok, or your opinions on TikTok in general?
Yeah, well, my opinion first, to start like with the why we tried TikTok, and I think it's a super interesting channel. I think 4 reasons. First, it's a white space, like not a lot of B2B brands are there. So it's super interesting when you have a white space. Second, it's probably one of the channel where you can have the best virality today. Like today, having virality and creating buzz on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram has become like super hard. But on TikTok, with one video, you can reach millions of impressions super fast. And so this is super interesting because every time a platform is launching a new channel, basically they are kind of making it easier to get views and engagement. So it's the right time to leverage this. Also, I think the new generation of buyers are in TikTok. It's like a cliche to say all young people on TikTok, but it's true.
Yeah.
Also, like young people on TikTok, and they're the people gonna buy your solution tomorrow. And finally, it also has a lot of
Yes.
impact on search. Like if you look at zero-click content and what appears in the SERP of Google, like more and more TikTok content is appearing, and obviously it's also going to influence LLM. So for all those reasons, I'm like, why not try it out? But then TikTok is not an easy channel. So what we've learned, first, my belief is that don't go on TikTok if you're not committed to create 95% entertaining content that's not gonna talk about your product, and
Yeah.
that like you need to be okay with the fact that you're not gonna sell anything, and that you're not gonna be able to link TikTok to a performance KPI whatsoever for quite a long time. And so if you're not ready to do this, don't
Yep.
go on TikTok, obviously. But then the learning we had, like trying to launch this entertaining and relatable content, I would say 2 main learnings. The first, we tried to externalize it at first because nobody had ever like done TikTok content before in the company, myself first. And so I was like, let's try, to go fast. Let's break the Lemlist rules and then pay some expert to do it with us. Not for us, but with us. But in the end, it didn't. We had some learnings and we were able to post some stuff really fast. So that was good for this reason. But I ended up the collaboration quite fast because I realized that TikTok works when it's super spontaneous and genuine. And actually, the videos that did get viral on the TikTok account were videos that either my team or myself did on the spot. And I think that's the kind of content that
Yeah.
you cannot create with an agency. You need to do it yourself. Like I'm gonna give you one example. I was at the office and there was this sales guy on the phone, and like he was like doing a lot of very short demos, and some of them were in Spanish and some of them were in German, and like he was like trying to say Spanish and German and Italian words, and it was so funny because like he wouldn't really know the language, but he was trying super hard, And so I kept filming him for like an hour, and then I was like, this is gold content. But yeah, this is something that was on the spot, right? I couldn't like imagine that he would be doing this. So yeah, I think at some point, if you want a
Yeah.
content to be genuine and being in the TikTok codes, it's probably best that you do it yourself. The second learnings is I think you need, before you launch a content, you shouldn't only be like, oh, I'm gonna post funny stuff for my audience. Like you should be like, what are the core topics that will make my
Yeah.
audience say, oh, they get me and they have my back. And that's what I call defining your brand standpoints. And I think this is super important because this is also helping you having the ideas then on the spot, because you have this framework of what are the opinion you wanna illustrate as a brand. And so, for instance, for Lemlist, we have 3 brand standpoints that we built as a team. The first one is marketing dreams and sales are in the trenches. So basically, we're roasting marketing that sometimes like bring shitty leads to sales team or create like fluff or complex messaging that the sales team cannot even use in their everyday life. And so we created a lot of mini videos around that theme. Another example is around AI and sales, saying basically that AI is not the enemy, but the enemy is just if you don't go and use AI, someone like using AI will basically replace you. And so we're trying to do funny videos on how AI can actually help sales. So for instance, this was actually entertaining and promotional, but it works super well on TikTok. We had this launch that is an AI voice recorder that basically can create LinkedIn voice note for sales team with their own voice, and it can also make them speak another language. And so we had recorded some of our sales teams, and then we made the AI, the Lemlist AI, we made them like speak another language. So for example, Tal, we made like the French Tal, and then we went to Tal with his own voice in French, and we filmed it like live, like listening to his own voice in French, and he was like generally, like laughing, and that was a really cool content, just about this topic. So yeah, that was our learning on TikTok. We're still learning, to be honest, but it's I think it's a great playground.
It's such a good reminder to not get caught in these old sort of like tropes that everybody repeats, which is like B2B buyers aren't on TikTok, or B2B buyers aren't on Instagram, or, it's like, to your point, these platforms are changing fast, buyer behaviors are changing fast, and like the people who get the biggest reward, for example, on LinkedIn, to your point, if you were doing this strategy you all are doing now on LinkedIn, which you've been doing all along, but if more companies were doing it 6 years ago or 5 years ago, it was much more blue ocean there, and possibly even faster growth and opportunities as a result. So now, if something looks obvious now, it means it's more competitive. So this is just a good reminder you're doing for everybody
Exactly.
right now, which is like, don't automatically write off TikTok as not a valuable use of your time because it's not obvious, which might actually mean it's a very interesting opportunity because no other competitors really are playing there. And it's very high likelihood that you have buyers that are hanging out on TikTok. Very high likelihood. So, it's a great note to end on there. This episode was fantastic. The insights per minute were very, very high. So
Thank you so
thank you
much for
for
having me.
taking the time. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I recommend everybody listening, go follow Dami on LinkedIn. She's dropping posts there at least, 1, 2, multiple times per week, what have you, on a lot of the stuff that we talked about here today, as well as other marketing related topics. And go check out Lemlist. Go check out the different channels that we talked about. Go look and study what we talked about today. Because it's one thing to listen to this and like get inspiration, but I think you can connect the dots even more if you go look at Lemlist's YouTube channel, go look at LinkedIn, go look at the people posting there, go look at the website and how they're incorporating all of this stuff together. And that's where you will really be able to see what they're up to. And so, yeah, Dami, anywhere else you would recommend me to guide people to or people to check out?
No, that was perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And we'll catch everybody on the next one.